Welcome back to another episode of Gumball Love. I'm your host, Melissa Ledger. Thanks so much for joining again today. Today's episode is inspired by a very special lady that messaged me a request. I told you to message me the topics that you are struggling with, that you want me to most cover, and I am happy to. This gives me so much inspiration. I just love when I know I'm helping one person specifically, but I know that this topic is going to resonate with, I think, just about everybody that's listening to this program. So let's get started. All right. Why do we like this guy that is not... let me just read her question because it's so well written. It's like, the struggle is real. We totally get it. Why? This is from Sarah. Why is it guys that make no effort and don't seem to care are the ones we want to chase after? I know it's stupid and ridiculous, yet those are the ones I'm drawn to. I feel this needs a podcast episode. Hashtag fed up, hashtag need to move on. Very angry emoji face and cry emoji face. Sarah, I totally get it. Okay. We may not like these answers, but here they are, because I'm going to give you the truth, and I'm not going to give you the tips and tricks and how to get him and how to win him back, because I want to tell you all the games that a lot of quote-unquote relationship experts teach you how to play is exactly, if you're playing games, you're playing with game players. So you might win the short game, but you're not going to win the long game. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of the tactics are teaching you how to attract gumball guys. I could teach you how to do that. I could teach you how to drive him crazy. There are ways to do this. However, what's the point? Because you want a real relationship. You want true intimacy. You want true connection. You don't want a guy that's playing games with you. So, but to answer her question, why are we attracted to these guys? So I will tell you, that is the question that I asked my therapist when I first sat down. I'm attracted to these wrong guys. Tell me why. So I will tell you that I grew up around a lot of gumball guys. I did not grow up with parents that had healthy marriage. This was not modeled in front of me as a child. And so when I started to date, and I'm just going to say, when we are all dating, we are attracted to what's familiar. We are attracted to what we know. And if you are attracted, or if you did not have this modeled in front of you as a child, and you haven't had a healthy dating relationship, or this has been your pattern, it's because it's what you know. And I know that might seem like, what? But I don't want this. Like, that's not what I think I know. And so when I've talked about in other podcasts, the gumball love relationship starts out intense, right? It starts out with a lot of promise. We feel connection and chemistry. But what I've learned is connection and chemistry can be just physical. And it, a lot of times, means nothing. It doesn't mean that they're going to be your husband. It doesn't mean that there's some cosmic reason. It just means that your chemicals are compatible. And that's it. It does not mean you're emotionally compatible. It does not have any indication of your long-term relationship capacity. So I used to really overthink that. But we are naturally gravitate toward the guys that are familiar to us. It can get down to smell, it can get down to look, it gets down to their mannerisms. There's a lot of things that we're drawn into. And so to answer her question though, she's like, okay, so I'm drawn to this. So I just want you to really think about how you are drawn to what you know, what's familiar. I want you to just take a minute to think about it. Okay? Because the gumball guys, they're all so different. I was just telling a friend, some of these gumball guys are great. They're so fun. They're funny. They're engaging. They really are when somebody is always looking to other people for validation, sometimes you catch them on a day when they feel really validated. Like you catch them when somebody else has already given them a gumball and you're like, you really like them because you know what? I think that they can be, there's so much potential, right? They could be phenomenal individuals if they really just knew their own worth and felt the value that they really are, and they could just relax and enjoy building a meaningful connection. But they grow so dependent on other people giving them validation that this is not a reality for them. And so they are dependent. It's kind of funny how we feel like we're chasing them, yet they're dependent on validation. And we chase them because, there's a lot of different reasons. It depends on where you are in the relationship. But she's asking specifically, what about the ones that they don't seem to care or they aren't putting in any effort? If they're not putting in any effort, then what are we chasing? So we're chasing usually what we thought they were in the beginning. So you met him, or maybe you work with him, or you, work relationship, online dating relationship, you met him at, a cafe or whatever. We develop these fantasy ideas of what we think people are. And then over time, we get to know them when we see the reality, right? But that fantasy, a lot of times the gumball guy doesn't quite let you in fully. He doesn't let you see who he is. And so you're left to kind of fill in the blanks. If you meet him and he gets together with you and you have these great times together, but then all of a sudden he becomes unavailable. He becomes unavailable because he feels like if you see the whole picture, you will reject him. And you probably will, because usually the whole picture is bad and he knows it. He knows that he can't meet your expectations. He can't fulfill the responsibilities of a long-term relationship. So he stays at a distance, but he triggers certain things in you. The first thing I believe is that fairy tale romance that we have wired into us from the first time we sat down and watched a Disney movie or we read the Cinderella book. If you have daughters, I really think we should hesitate on talking about that fairy tale, because I feel like we fight that all the time. It's like there's this happily ever after expectation that I don't really know anyone that's living it, but it just feels like this goal, that our cloud that hangs over us. And so when we have these romantic and intense experiences with this guy, it triggers the idea and the promise of that dream. We have pretty intense ties to that. Whatever your intense fantasy dreams are. Why do you think movies like Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey or Titanic, why do you think these things are so powerful, and why do they have such unbelievable success with women especially? Because we get to see the fantasy of the bad boy winning in the end. I don't know that Leo DiCaprio was necessarily the bad boy in Titanic, but 50 Shades of Grey, and then Edward the bad vampire who wanted to kill her, and he was bad, and he's like, what if I'm not the hero? What if I'm the bad guy? And then she takes all these risks, and against all adversity, they end up happily ever after. Or she ends up giving away her soul and living with no blood in her veins and cold lizard tongues. I remember telling this to my little sister, and I was like, don't fantasize about this. I'm like, can you imagine what it would be like to kiss him? He's not even warm. So it'd be like kissing a reptile. Disgusting. He would be cold. Gross. His tongue would be cold. There would be nothing warm. Why would that at all be? That would be disgusting. If you have a choice, you pick the wolf. At least At least he's hot. That was my favorite line. Well, I am hotter than you in the tent scene. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's way too long to explain, but that was hilarious. But Taylor Lautner's best line in that movie. But you know what I'm saying? Like those movies, or 50 Shades of Grey, not a movie about sex. I had a request from someone to do a really detailed analysis of 50 Shades of Grey. Let me know if you'd be interested in that, because I actually did do this line by line, or I watched the movie and then I just kept noting how many times there were red flags, or that this fantasy of converting the bad boy into somebody you can marry and spend your life with. And that fantasy is powerful. We hold on to that. We are soothed. Sometimes he becomes your gumball because the guy that it's like, if you have a pattern of this type of guy rejecting you, there's a certain fantasy about seeing that guy accept you and being accepted by him. I mean, I think I just said the same thing, but do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you've dated this type of guy over and over again, oh my gosh, my computer's about to die. Hold on. I always think just because my computer's on the desk, like it's on the charger. No, it doesn't just jump on the charger. Okay. So if you've been rejected by this type of guy, I have analyzed this ad nauseum, and I really feel like there's a similar energy with gumball guys. I've noticed this with so many clients that I've worked with. They'll think I'm predicting or be able to predict this behavior. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said that. Like, it's like, you know him. And I do feel like I know him because it's a very similar energy. It's a very similar pattern. And so, and I think we can feel them yearning for that connection. We see the glimmers of hope because they want it, but they can't do it. And so they run and hide. And you're chasing that potential. You want to feel accepted by and feel that redemption from all of the rejection that you've gotten. You want your happy ending. You're chasing the happy ending because you are applying a fantasy expectation. But this is an unrealistic human being to expect it from. He doesn't have the capacity to fulfill the fantasy. So you are hopeful of it. And every time he puts in any amount of effort, it's like, oh, there's a chance. Now, it sounds simple, but when you have that connection with that guy, and you can, I've had really long and in-depth conversations with guys that are in these situations. They want to date you. They see your value. They can, but it's like they cannot picture themselves being enough. They feel like it's going to fail, like they're going to fail, that you're going to reject them, that you're going to walk away, because ultimately they know they don't have what it takes. Can you imagine knowing that? Like, I've really been thinking about this in the reverse. Like, imagine being that guy. Like, I know that as soon as, just imagine thinking this. Let's reverse this. As soon as he figures me out, he's going to know I can't be a good girlfriend. I don't know how to focus on him. I get distracted by other men. Like, just think if you were distracted by other men, like you really had a hard time being loyal, that you got bored with every guy that you dated and you didn't know why, because you didn't know what was wrong with you. So if you met somebody really great, you just knew you were going to let them down. So your reaction would be to reject them before they reject you. But you still like them and you still like interacting. You like their attention. You like spending time with them. So you take advantage of opportunities. If you're available and it sounds fun, you're in the right mood, you're having a few drinks, yeah, come over. Like, you'd be open to it sometimes, but you would know you can't go but if the other person, like when you're on the other side, you're like, oh great, we can spend time together. And then you feel like you're connecting. You feel like you're creating intimacy. And it doesn't mean that you're not. It doesn't mean that you're not learning about him. It doesn't mean that you aren't getting closer, that you aren't developing a bond, that you can have all of those things. But it gets down to he does not see himself as worthy. That's the only reason that they're coming back. You know what I mean? Like, they're putting in minimal effort. I mean, there's different versions of this guy. I'm talking about the guy that really is struggling with feelings for you. But then there's the other Gumball guy that he enjoys women chasing him. He puts in the quarters so he can get the gumballs, but he has no intention of dating you seriously. So the reason we're chasing them and we're drawn to them is because we feel familiar with them for whatever reason. And I really want you to think about this, because when you can see, like, maybe your father was not a good father and he did not develop a good close bond with you, that he wasn't available emotionally. Maybe you experienced some kind of abuse, or any of the male and the key male influences in your life were not solid. I want you to think about, does this guy resemble my father? Does he resemble male influences in my life, or the absence, or is this the typical experience? Because when a guy acts unavailable, or he acts like he's uninterested, or he loses, this is why it was such a big deal for me. Like, so many people in my life growing up were the kind that would, like, give me bad eye contact, talk over me, interrupt me, not really paying attention to what I'm saying. And so the message that got burned into my brain was, I'm not interesting, I'm not enough, I'm boring, I need to hurry up, I need to entertain. I was always trying really hard with people that weren't respecting me. Now, as an adult, years later, this whole process, I was like, wow, I have to teach myself that when someone isn't respecting what I have to say, or when they disengage from my conversation, that's my cue to recognize this isn't a person that I should be investing in, trying to talk to, trying to connect with, because they don't see my value. And it doesn't make them a bad person, because sometimes, maybe somebody else is saying something really valuable to me, but it doesn't resonate with me. And so I don't see the value in what they're saying. And it could be really valuable to somebody else, but in the same light, I wouldn't want that person to continue to talk to me, because it's not something that I value. So, but what I'm saying is, if you got into the habit, or if you've been in the habit, like, let's say you had parents, like, let's think of both parents, like, this is what therapy is. You grow up and you go, okay, I can only blame mom and dad for so long, because mom and dad had mom and dads, right? So you got grandma and grandpa on both sides of your family. Then you have your mom and dad, and they had what they had from their parents. So you look at what they got and then what they gave you, and hopefully they did their best, or maybe in your case, they did a really crappy job. I look back and I think, man, my parents struggled. They weren't happy with each other. But when I look at it, I'm like, they were doing the best they could at the time. And so we all are a product of it to a certain degree. But then we have to say, okay, mom and dad did great, but now it's my responsibility to fill in where I feel I have gaps and make sense of things that don't make sense to me, and heal wounds that may have been created. Because otherwise you can stay angry at your parents forever because you feel like you got ripped off, or, like you feel like, gosh, I started this pattern and it was caused by you. And if it weren't, but we can get into that mode. But when we look at our grandparents and we look at our parents, and then we look at what we got, and then we make sense of it, you can heal a lot of things and you can turn a lot of things around. So sometimes what we're attracted to is the dysfunction that we always knew growing up. And there are behaviors that you like them, and they're not good, but you get it. You meet that guy and he has that quirk or multiple quirks, and you understand it. So even when if someone else looks at the way he's communicating with you, they would be like, wow, he's a jerk. But you're like, I get it. I understand it. And so you can connect because there's I don't know, it's like there's wiring that's connecting. And this is referred to a lot of times as toxic wiring. It's like we're connecting, we're kind of connecting on our toxic wiring though, and it's not extremely healthy. So the only way to stop doing this now, and I'm going to tell you, this is like, I believe that girls that fall for Gumball guys, you and me, we are like the opposite side of the addict. We are addicted to this kind of guy, and we will always kind of be drawn to it. And so sometimes it catches you off guard. It comes in a package you didn't expect. This still happens to me to this day. Now, at this point, I can still be drawn in. I can still be attracted. I can still have experiences. However, the time it takes me to figure it out is sometimes reduced to days, like a few dates. And then I'm like, oh. And if it's somebody I don't see as often, or I don't spend a lot of time with, like intimate time or close time or one-on-one time, sometimes it takes me a little bit longer because I don't have enough experience with their different moods, especially if you see them, like if it's just somebody you work with, you only see them in their work personality. You don't see them like in their personal life and when they have fun, when they're serious, when they're mad. Like if you can't see all those variations, it's hard to figure this out at first. It's not an exact science. And I think a lot of people, they're just in different situations. So this is not easy, but it's not that difficult either. I just want to help you so that you don't fall in love, or if you do fall in love, you can see, I love this guy. I think he's great. When he walks in the room, I feel my heart rate increase. I'm jealous if he's talking to other women. However, I know the reality of being with him is not the fantasy. The everyday reality is he doesn't really care about what's going on in my life. He doesn't connect to my family. He doesn't want to spend time around my friends. He's not responding to me consistently. He will flirt with other women. He will have sex with other women if I'm not around. He's not loyal. He's whatever. Like you list all the things that you know are going to prevent him from having a long-term connection. And then you spend time and get to know and study what a healthy marriage looks like. And once you know the polar opposite of what he is, you start to let go of the hope that this guy can become. Christian Grey never becomes a guy you marry and have kids with. He goes on to the next girl, and then she's sad and she realizes there's a new girl moving into the bedroom and she's redecorating it the way she likes. That's how it would really work with him. He would get bored of her eventually. He doesn't fall in love because he doesn't have the capacity and the bandwidth. So the reality is Edward would have eventually bitten Bella and killed her or made her a vampire. Like it wouldn't have turned into a long romance because that's not how he was wired. It's funny how they show it kind of in the beginning and all of a sudden it turns into love, yet he wants to, like, I remember the dad figure was like, he could see how much he desired her blood. And I was thinking, wow, it's like he desires her attention so much. It was like, there's an addiction problem there. It's like, is he falling in love with who she is as a person? Because when he was like, do you realize how long I've waited for you? Like, waited for what? Because you like all of her hobbies and her interests. Like you like her dad and her family and where she came from. What did he know about her that made him so intoxicated and like, I can't stop myself from being drawn to you. I mean, he was like basically stalking her. You know, when she got attacked by the guys, he was there in, 4 seconds. So like, this is weird stuff, but we're fantasizing about it. And then we get into fantasy so far that we sort of lose perspective of reality. And then we meet some version of this guy in real life and it triggers all these things. And then we start chasing what is not real. So the reason the reason you're so drawn to it is because you're drawn to the fantasy of what you think he's going to be or what he's shown you in moments. But what you have to force yourself to do is say, what does he do on an everyday, consistent basis? What does he do every day? Because when you respect yourself and you respect your time and you respect your life and your goals, you want a partner. You're focused on making a difference in the world. You're focused on growing a company. You're focused on helping other people. You're not playing these little kid games. And that's where I really want you to separate the men from the boys. These are little boys playing games. As soon as you realize it's a boy, you've got to make that shift and say, yes, it would be really nice if this boy grew up, but he ain't gonna. And I'm just about to post, it'll be posted before this podcast goes out, but I'm going to post that it is not your responsibility to pick up where his mother gave up. You can't do it. Like, you become mommy. And then it becomes really unsexy. You want to make your relationship unsexy? Become mommy. Because then it's like he wants attention, but then he's very needy and he can't really do stuff. Like, I mean, these guys there's some version, like they're doing drugs or they drink too much or they can't pay their bills or they're really struggling with their career or they're fighting with their ex. They've got all this drama in their life because they can't manage their lives because they don't respect themselves. They don't respect their health. They don't respect their finances. They don't respect their home. Things are disorganized. Their laundry isn't done. Things aren't clean. There's a million different things that are going on with this guy. So we get sucked in because usually when you meet him, it's when you are together and you're organized and everything is put together and you feel like, oh, he's so cute and we have this chemistry, and the fun part seems to get eclipsed and you lose perspective on exactly how much work it's going to take to get this guy to where you think he can be if he does all these things. So we need guys that are move-in ready. You know, when you walk in and you look at an apartment and it's move-in ready. The appliances are in, the paint's there, the carpet's fresh, and the little welcome basket is sitting there. It's ready to go. It doesn't need any improvement. It's done. That's what you're looking for. You cannot get sidetracked by potential, by fantasy, by little texts, by sweet nothings. Because sometimes he'll give you gumballs. Those little breadcrumbs, those are gumballs for you. And you're hanging on to all the sweet nothings. And he's hanging on to your sweet nothings. But at the end, there's nothing actually building that's substantial. So I'm going to end there. Let me know your thoughts. Melissa@gumballlove.com is my email. Send me any other topics you'd like me to cover, and I will talk to you soon. Until next time, take care. Oh, one more thing. You know when you are going to listen to a podcast and you read the reviews, and it's that one review that makes you go, that's going to make me push play. That's it. You could be that review for that person. And you know how sometimes you forget, how did I find this podcast? It might have just been somebody else leaving a comment that led you to information that changes your life. So if you could do that for the next girl, I just think of the girl that doesn't know this, that's sitting there stuck with a gumball guy and she doesn't understand. She's confused. She doesn't know a way out. And if I can get to her because of you, that will make me so happy. So if you could do that for me, I would really appreciate it. Just any comments, anything you feel. If it hasn't helped you, don't leave a review. I wouldn't expect you to do that. But if you're listening and this is impacting you and you can leave a few words, it makes a bigger difference than you think, because the more activity, the more engagement around each podcast is what gives the podcast the ability to show up in searches, and it just pushes that reach out. It's almost like it's a form of advertising, really, but the more engagement, the more advertising, the more that search is going to pop up, and the higher we get in the searches. So thank you again for your help and for your reviews and for thinking of somebody else. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you soon on the next podcast. Bye-bye.